It is so wonderful for me to once again be able to speak with you from this pulpit this morning, in this beautiful sanctuary, in this incredible church, which has become for me a second home. I've learned so much in these handful of months that I've had the privilege of serving as Calvary's Rabbi in residence, and I am humbled as I thank you. And I'll have more to say about that specifically in a few moments. I am humbled as I thank you and honored to have the privilege of speaking with you this morning. Allow me to begin by acknowledging our guests from Rodev Shalom, where I am blessed to be the inaugural Francis F. and David R. Levin Rabbinic Scholar, and to welcome those from throughout the Jewish community and our wider interfaith friends who are joining us this morning, over and above you good members of Calvary who have welcomed me so warmly. We have, you and I, so much to learn from one another, so much to give and to share and to gain from our being and our worshiping alongside each other as we live and grow in community. One of the most wonderful aspects of being your rabbi in residence and part of the rector's clergy team here at Calvary is, perhaps counterintuitively, the opportunities that I have been afforded to better appreciate my own faith as a Jew, mind you, by being present for your faith. It is a type of witness, I suppose. Now, to those who might protest, suggesting that this is no way for a rabbi to speak, let alone what is a rabbi doing giving a sermon in a church on Sunday morning anyway, I refer you to none other than the first Jewish Supreme Court Justice, the late Louis Brandeis, who in 1915, speaking before a group of Reform rabbis, as it happened, addressed the growing din that was being stirred up by his fervent Zionism, his commitment to the founding of a Jewish state alongside his fierce American patriotism. The charge leveled against Brandeis at the time was that of dual loyalty, to which he replied, "Let no one imagine that one is inconsistent with the other. Multiple loyalties are objectionable only if they are inconsistent." And I tell you, what I have discovered at Calvary, both within the team of professionals that your rector, Father Jensen, has brought together, as well as among Calvary's dedicated members who I'm coming to know, what I have discovered at Calvary is as authentic an expression of my own religious values. This is to say, here at Calvary, yours is as authentic an expression of compassion and generosity, humility, curiosity, and reason, and a good dose of good humor. Here is found as an authentic an expression of my own beliefs, my beliefs in action, as any I have ever encountered anywhere, full stop. In my time of need, Jonathan, you were there for me, and I thank you, my friend. Just as this entire congregation, it should be known, stepped forward for the Tree of Life congregation, which tonight, for the fourth year in a row, will celebrate and welcome Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and in 10 days' time we'll gather here once more for Yom Kippur in this very church. As has been true since first our neighbors suddenly and violently found themselves without a home and found at Rodev Shalom a daily and weekly place to rest and recharge, and have found here at Calvary each year at this season the experience of an expression of real hope and true healing as anywhere. This is a model, yours is a model for all of us and for communities of faith everywhere. Good for you. Good for all of us. In your simple acts of generosity and goodness, of being present and available for one's neighbor. In these manifestations of your Christian virtue and God's good works, in these ways does a single community model for each one of us what it is that God expects of all of us collectively. Yours, Calvary, is a model for our entire community, and it is a singular privilege for me to be your rabbi. And I'm so grateful to be judged by the company I keep. Today is an auspicious day on the Jewish calendar. This morning in particular, in many ways it is an otherwise ordinary morning like any other, and in the same breath, today is the day which Jewish tradition teaches, or more accurately, tonight will be the night, and tomorrow the day on which we shall celebrate Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year. Literally, it translates as head of the year, and it is that day which, according to Jewish legend, literature, and liturgy, today is the day on which we celebrate the birthday, the creation of the world. A celebration, Rosh Hashanah, is of the day on which the cosmos and the galaxies, our solar system and this planet, and all of humanity came into being. Indeed, our sacred texts proclaim, on this day, God said, "Let there be light." And the Talmudic rabbis tell us that this is to be understood as being this day. Rosh Hashanah Day is the day on which creation began. And if there were any doubt, the rabbis of the Talmud call this day Hayom Harat Olam, the day of the world's birth. And therefore, as we celebrate the world's beginnings today, so does Jewish tradition encourage us to each reflect upon our own lives and that which we want to create for ourselves and our friends and family. Now, you and I understand, I trust, that even as we celebrate Rosh Hashanah as the birthday of the world, and according to Jewish reckonings, today marks the 5,783rd year since creation, we appreciate that the long-running story, much loved, that begins, "In the beginning God created heaven and earth," we understand, do we not, that this is a mythic story, or in the words of the recently departed Christian theologian Friedrich Buechner, the Bible is a great fairy tale that happens to be true. The fairy tale has pain and danger. Good is pitted against evil. People are transformed, and in the end, all the characters are revealed for who they truly are. Buechner goes on, to live within this fairy tale, to live within the Bible's stories, is to experience what Buechner refers to as the joy, the beauty, the holiness beyond the walls of the world. But even more, to read the stories of Genesis as an historically accurate account of the world's beginnings, of how human life came into being, to read these stories literally would be pure fundamentalism. And such a fundamentalist belief poses a danger to the rule and role of reason upon which our faith, yours and mine, and the common good we all seek, upon which that depends. But nonetheless, let us suspend disbelief, not so as to allow that the stories of Genesis ought to be true, but rather to suggest that there is another, different Jewish creation myth that might take hold of our imaginations. In this story of creation, which is post-biblical, the story comes to us from the Kabbalists, from the Jewish mystics who settled in the northern Galilee region of Israel some 500 years ago. There, near the Mount of Beatitudes, from which Jesus preached 16 centuries prior, a rabbi named Isaac Luria taught the following mystical account of the world's beginnings. When we read in Genesis, Rabbi Luria taught, that God created heaven and earth, we should understand this to mean that God sent aspects of divinity, for example, compassion and wisdom, beauty and strength, patience and forbearance, the ability to forget, the willingness to forgive. God sent all of these into the world and also threw in a bit of grace and glory. The mystics teach that God sent all of this into the primordial space within which creation would take place. How? By putting these essential divine qualities that make for the divine power of repair into earthenware or clay vessels. But somewhere between heaven and their final destination, the vessels proved incapable of containing the totality of God's creative powers. There was, if you will, too much God to be contained in the clay vessels. And so Rabbi Luria taught they burst. The earthenware clay vessels erupted and shattered. And now those elements of the divine essence, the sparks of holiness that animate all living beings and all relationships, all that had been contained in those clay vessels, compassion and wisdom, beauty and strength, patience and forbearance, the ability to forget, the willingness to forgive, as well as grace and glory, all these became embedded within the shards and shells of the clay vessels themselves. And in Rabbi Luria's name, the mystics have been teaching for more than 500 years now that as a result of what we call shivrei kelim, the shattering of the vessels, our world, from its inception, has been a mixture of the holy and the commonplace, has been a mixture of heaven and clay, and our world is an amalgam of that which is ordinary and extraordinary, that which is mundane and that which is miraculous. And for this reason, Lurianic Kabbalah explains the breaking of those vessels on that first morning, on Creation Day so many generations ago, provides each and every human being today with both the opportunity as well as the responsibility to pick up the pieces and to engage in acts of tikkun olam, acts of repair of our worlds, plural. How shall we do this? By tending to ourselves and to our relationships, by piecing together the pieces all around us, by pulling together the sum of those things which can no longer be ignored. And it is this, my friends, picking up the pieces, that is the image I wish to bring to you and share with you on this auspicious New Year's Day. And two, this is why I asked Dr. Alan Lewis, Calvary's brilliant director of music and Calvary's wonderful choir, thank you all so very much, why I asked to include in this morning's service the hymn, Morning Has Broken. Because not only is this selection from the hymnal a beautiful one, but on a day when we reflect upon and celebrate beginnings, and at a time of year when we commit ourselves to acts of repair and restoration in our own lives and in the world around us, what could be better than the image of a morning like the first morning, broken and in need of repair? This truly is the story of our day, is it not? But there is as well a second reason that I requested this particular hymn for this particularly auspicious morning. The hymn was composed and first published in 1931 by an Englishwoman named Eleanor Farjeon. She was known as Nellie to her family and friends. Nellie Farjeon was born in the Strand, London in 1881 to Benjamin and Maggie, and theirs was a literary clan. Nellie herself wrote plays and poetry and even satire in addition to poetic hymns. And her two brothers were writers, and a third was a composer, and her father Benjamin, in his own right, was an accomplished journalist and prodigious novelist. But for our purposes this morning, what is most interesting about Nellie's father, Benjamin Farjean, is that he was a Jew. And as her mother Maggie was not, we can say, perhaps anachronistically, that Eleanor Farjean, who composed the hymn we shared just moments ago, grew up in an interfaith household. So much have we to learn from one another. And so perhaps it ought not be a surprise that Eleanor Farjean so beautifully describes for us that which is at the heart of our Rosh Hashanah celebrations, the fact that this morning is like the first morning, broken, springing fresh from the Word. We have so many pieces to pick up and to pull together. All of us do. So many parts to bring back together to make our world whole. Perhaps it has always been so, but dare I say it, it has never felt more so than on this day. After all, in the last 2.5 years, so much has changed for us. And the last 12 months in particular, in the words of the recently departed Queen, this past year has truly been an annus horribilis, for so much has been squandered senselessly. So much has been sacrificed needlessly, and perhaps we might just see things as broken, but not beyond repair. Perhaps we can see the pieces and people who are in front of us, and indeed, perhaps we might even see ourselves as broken, but repairable. And to this reality, on this day when Jews around the world mark a new year, the year 5783, Rabbi Isaac Luria and the Kabbalists, the Jewish mystics of 500 years ago, tell us our task is to begin restoring the broken pieces and the blessed people in our lives to wholeness anew. For ours, yours, and mine, ours is a broken state individually, within our relationships, within our congregations to be sure, and within the wider worlds, our community, our city, the broken state of public institutions, and perhaps even democracy itself. All this, so much hurt and heartache, so many hard feelings, so much hard-headedness, these belie the potential for blessing, the potential for blessing that is buried within our shared willingness to engage in the challenging yet simple acts of repair. And every one of these looming challenges before us begins with each of our determination to engage in these acts of goodness and repair. This sentiment is echoed by perhaps the greatest writer of the 20th century never to garner the Nobel Prize for Literature. I have in mind Argentine philosopher and novelist Jorge Luis Borges, who, though not himself a Jew, considered himself a Kabbalist. This fact, coupled with Borges's lifelong affection for Jews and his deep admiration and respect for Jewish culture and literature, earned the writer no little enmity among a growing list of fascist and anti-Semitic critics. And so it is that in 1934, Jorge Luis Borges responded to his critics in an essay he entitled Yo Judío, I, a Jew, in which the novelist declared that while I was not born a Jew, I wish I had been. So admiring was he of Jewish thought and wisdom, and of our individual brokenness and that which is broken for us by others, of the pieces of our lives that lie before us this morning, as on that first morning, of our inherent and universally shared brokenness. Borges tells us it is best if we look upon our broken state as one of life's greatest opportunities to prove ourselves deserving of the joy, beauty, and holiness of which Frederick Buechner spoke, and that may be discovered in simple, everyday acts of restoration and repair as envisioned by the Jewish mystics, and so many still to this day. Everything that happens, Borges wrote, everything that happens to us, including humiliations, misfortunes, embarrassments, everything that happens to us is given to us as clay, so that we may make from the miserable circumstances of our lives something worthy of God's greatest blessings. Lev shalom ve'olam shalom, peace in our own hearts, so that we might create peace in the world around us. And how then do we begin to pick up the pieces? How then do we begin to engage in acts of repair to the brokenness all about? By sharing time with those we have overlooked or ignored, inviting a conversation. It's never too late to initiate a conversation. It's never too late to talk. Certainly it's never too late to listen and to be in those moments, present for another's pain and patient for the duration. How shall we do this? By being humble in the face of another's hurt and being able to sit with the one who is sad and is suffering. By offering to acknowledge where we have been too quick to judge, and by being willing to courageously apologize to those we have wronged. By engaging in selfless acts of empathy, compassion, and kindness, and by extending a hand to a friend and offering someone a leg up. By not being afraid to show one's humanity, to acknowledge one's own vulnerabilities, and therein to connect with others along our shared commonalities. For each of us is, in the words of Jewish singer-songwriter Dan Nichols, each of us is perfect and a little broken too. And it is within each of our participating and helping to put the pieces back together. It shall be in our joining together in these holy acts of repair that we may yet begin restoring our individual, our congregational, as well as our communal and national worlds to wholeness once more. A closing image for Rosh Hashanah. Imagine yourself a student who has come upon a large map of the world in the newspaper. Remember those? Curious, the student takes the map of the world to the teacher. Sensing an opportunity to challenge the young charge, the teacher takes the map of the globe and promptly but deliberately tears the newspaper into long strips of many, many pieces. Soon, fragments of newsprint fall to the floor at the student's feet. Handing over a roll of tape, the teacher then challenges you to reassemble the map of the world. Instantly, the student drops to the floor and nearly as quickly completes the assignment by correctly putting the pieces of the whole world back together again. We're only moments before the image of the world we had believed we knew so well had been torn from us and treated as broken beyond repair and all but cast asunder. Yet now the world was once again being offered up by the student as an intact whole. That morning, when the teacher asked, how was it possible to reassemble the papered over world so quickly? The optimistic response was to the point. There was a picture of people on the other side. I repaired first one person and then another, and relationship by relationship, the whole world got better too. My friends, each of us is that student, and each and every one of us is also one of the people in need of repair. And the teacher is our creator. We have so much to learn and to share and to do with one another. Let us learn from one another and share with one another and not be shy about joining together to pick up the pieces that are ours to restore. On this morning, like on the first morning, and on every morning and day of this new year and the lives that are before us, I say to you, Boker Tov, good morning, and Shana Tova. May we be blessed with a happy and healthy new year. Amen.